Welcome. I am having a great conversation today and one that matters if you're looking to elevate your firm. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, and the topic is expand your sphere, how professional communities actually help to elevate accounting firms. And I'm going to be having that conversation with Joe Woodard. And some of the things that we're going to be touching on is how to transcend beyond traditional networking, maximizing professional communities, even if you're an introvert or new to this, and then elevating your firm with a holistic networking approach. So Joe is very generous. He is a teacher at heart. I suggest you be ready to take some notes because we are going to get into some tactical things that will help you as far as expanding your reach and elevating your firm. A little bit about Joe. He's an author, consultant, business coach, speaker, and Joe has trained over 125,000 accounting and business professionals in the area of practice management, technology trends, and strategic consulting. He's established Woodard Events LLC. It's an organization that offers education, community, and coaching to accounting professionals through on-site virtual events and advancement courses. Joe is also the host of one of the leading conferences for accountants and bookkeepers called Scaling New Heights, and I will be meeting Joe there. We've met several times. I've been to Scaling New Heights. I am definitely a fan and support that. And for every year since 2014, Joe's been recognized by Accounting Today as one of the top 100 influential people within the accounting profession. So if you want to find out more about Joe Woodard and Woodard Events, you can go to woodard.com and it is all there. Joe, let's just jump right in. I am so looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah, I am too. It's great to be here.
And before we get into some of the details about communities and networking, how did you get to move in this direction where you became such a proponent about advancing firm owners and really developing that strategic network or community?
Well, Lauren, it was because I was one for many years, and I experienced all of the pain that most of your listeners are experiencing, the struggles, the disruptions, navigating all the technology changes, the competitive landscape, the price commoditization. It's a really tough job. And I learned a lot from the School of Hard Knocks and began to network more and more, which is something we're going to talk about today with my peers and learning from what they were doing. And once I collected all this knowledge, and I put it through the refinement of my own experiences, it became, I'm not saying arrogantly, I'm just saying confidently, it became wisdom, because that is where wisdom comes from. It's knowledge in context. So once life had taught me the knowledge and given me the context, it almost became a mandate, a calling to say, if I have this, I owe it back to the profession to share it. But it's also, Lauren, something that is not stagnant. Once I began to share it, and once I began to see that what I was saying was resonating with people, because I would make comments while I was training on QuickBooks or other technical skills, and I'd make comments about practice management. Everybody would lean in their chairs, and I'd go, me too, I feel that pain. So I was addressing this market need. But what happened is it began to be an upward spiral, because as we were coaching more and more people on how to manage their practices better and how to expand their services, they informed us. So it's not just me and my couple decades of experience. It's not just the collective experience of over 100 years of business management on the part of our coaching team. It's the collective experience of all 350 of our member firms all getting together. And so once we amassed that kind of knowledge through that level of contextualization, it ultimately means Joe's not wise. It means that we are wise. The community's wise.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what you're talking about is so important, because you were open to receiving what your clients wanted, to really listening and paying attention. And maybe you thought your path was going to go in one direction, and you were able to pivot and be flexible in order to really meet the needs of the community. And speaking about community, when we're thinking about networking, networking is the word that is commonly used, but I know that you've made some switches and actually removed the word network from your membership programs. And I'm interested in hearing what prompted that decision.
Yeah, we used to call our program the National Advisor Network, and it gained this nickname NAN, and there are other NANs out there too, the National Action Network, which I get. We weren't trying to copy; it was just the way the acronym formed out. We never thought that people would use it like that, and it became this thing that was a beloved brand. It was. I remember it was a big deal when we changed from National Advisor Network, and then for a while we were Woodard Network, and when we dropped that, it was a big deal for people because they had the same question as you, Lauren, is why would you drop such a powerful word? But what we found happening in the world of social media over that 10, 15-year period of time is the word network had become diluted. This is a very strong word, but I'm using it intentionally as a strong word. It had become bastardized. And because of that, because networking now meant I'm just going to go out and just spam you in LinkedIn and spam you on Facebook and spam you on Instagram, or maybe with some of the more trendy ones, I'm not going to spam you, but I'm going to make the whole thing about peacocking in front of you and brand building in front of you. And it became this huge grab for leads and attention, marketing leads and attention, marketing leads and attention. And we didn't want to be associated with that by nomenclature. Now, Lauren, full transparency, I participate in those things.
Right.
I mean, you go to LinkedIn, I'm going to be out there talking about our conference and talking about our membership program. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is it's a thing. Networking has become something different from what we're building at Woodard. And I didn't want the term to associate the two. So what we've started referring to ourselves as is a community. It's all the difference.
And I agree with you that over the years, networking has changed a lot as far as the meaning goes. So what is really coming up for me is the intentionality and the intentionality to really make a bold move that was a pivot in a different direction than what everybody else was doing, as a way of separating yourself and maybe rising above. So I'd like to hear more about, professional community and how you see that as being different than the network. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Well, yeah, and what I would point to, if your listeners haven't read it yet, there's a book called The Tipping Point. The Tipping Point. I would recommend that you read that book, and I would recommend that you identify whether or not you might be what the book calls a maven. And by the way, the author of the book is Malcolm Gladwell, if that helps you find it, but Tipping Point is one, you'll find it. All you have to do is search that. It'll be the right book. But in the book, Gladwell points out that there are two key characters in the networking world. And one is the maven, and the other one is appropriately called the connector. So we would refer to a maven like a brand ambassador. And you can find your measurement of how many mavens are out there in your world by taking a net promoter score of your customers. And that will tell you how many customers would be likely to recommend your product or service to a friend or colleague, right? Well, that's a maven score, but it's bigger than just your customers. It's the people we might never think to net promoter, and it wouldn't be appropriate to net promoter, and that would be our peer group. So we have, and I'm so thankful for the mavens out there. I appreciate them so much, but we have mavens out there known to me and unknown to me that are telling accountants and bookkeepers, go check out this Woodard thing. This Woodard thing is great. Or go to this Scaling Lights conference. The Scaling Lights conference is great. And they may not be customers themselves. They just have somehow intersected us. And intersect is a key word for our conversation. They've somehow intersected us in a way that turned them in, well, I wouldn't say turned them into mavens. This is the key thing. They were already mavens, They already love to talk about what they believe in. The question is, can I become part of their Maven story? Can I become part of what they talk about? So that's a key component of community building and what I would call true networking or purer networking. The other one that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the book is the connector. And they are similar, but distinct. So a good example of a connector, if you know Deb Deffer from our team, she's very positive about people and what they do and so forth. So you may mistake her as a maven, but ultimately what she is a connector. And the difference is a maven will be very prone to share what's good out there. And they might even do it when they're speaking or writing or whatever. But what Deborah Deffer does, she finds person A, she finds person B, she instinctively sees the reason that they need to be talking to each other. And even if she has no stake in it whatsoever, she tries to get person A to talk to person B. And if you tried to turn that off in her, she'd implode. It's just a way she's wired, right? And because of that, even before Deborah Deffer joined our team, or maybe that's the reason I asked her to join the team, she had done so much for me in connecting me to other parties that I would have never even known had something synergistic with our brand or our products or our services. But Deb saw it, Deb knew it, Deb connected us. So when you're building a network, a true network, not like we're talking about with social networking, a true network, a relationship system, then find your mavens and get in their story, find the connectors and make sure they're always aware of what you're up to because they're always on the watch.
And just so I can clarify it, so the mavens are the people that give the shout outs all the time without any prompting. They love being able to promote something that they believe in or they found is valuable. And then the connectors, they are really the people that are more one-to-one, maybe introducing you to someone else. And I see them as people that can open doors and create new opportunities. So is that how you look at the two also? Is one is doing more of the loud shout out, for lack of a better word, and maybe the other one is doing more the one-to-one, looking for those opportunities?
Most of the time it manifests that way, but this is important because you might be thinking, I can't be a maven unless I have an audience. Well, you can maven one-on-one. I mean, I could just be in a room and it come across my mind, well, you really need to get to know Lauren Fogelman's stuff better, right? Because I know what you're doing, I believe in what you're doing, and I have an addressable need standing in front of me one-on-one. That's still maven. It becomes connector whenever I go out of my way to make sure you get into a meeting with them and get to know them, and I help you get that relationship launched. Then I become the connector.
That's interesting. So what I'm hearing actually is that connector has a natural tendency to be a facilitator of introductions. So,
they're relationship starters.
Yes. Nice. And that I know that so many people in the accounting professional, they are not natural extroverts. They might say, oh, I can't do any of this. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So what happens when someone doesn't naturally see themselves as a connector or a maven? They might be new to this or introverted, but they want to be able to start engaging with a professional community. So how would you advise someone that's in that position?
Yeah, so first I want to make sure that there are a lot of misunderstandings about introverts and a lot of stereotypes of introverts. So it may surprise you to learn I am one. I am an introvert. And so let's first unlearn what we've learned about introversion. All right, and you're probably more studied on this, Lauren, but just anybody listening in, please don't bring any sort of like the lay understandings of the general misconceptions of introversion. An introvert is somebody who is depleted at a higher level in a social environment, where an extrovert is energized or restored by a social environment. That's now, I know it's more complex than that. Some of you have studied psychology, Joe, you're oversimplifying it. Yes, that's what you do in environments like this, is you create the most simplistic understanding of it. And then I would encourage everybody to go read more. But if you understand, that's the core essence of it. So surprisingly, when I am in a highly interactive, highly engaged environment, like a cocktail reception at a conference, I am glad to be there. I don't want to be anywhere else, and I genuinely like the people in the room. But it depletes me rather than energizes me. So what happens as an introvert is, after that event takes place, I must go replenish myself by being alone, or in a very, very small group of people where I don't have to worry about anything. I could just, like my wife or my daughter, that could replenish me. But I can't be in a social environment without getting further depleted. But ironically, and this is where people get it confused, when I'm speaking to a group of people, 1 on 1,000, 1 on 500, 1 on whoever's listening in today, I'm energized. So it's more complex than we can imagine. And it's why we don't imagine that public speakers are introverts, but so many of them are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Now that we have that idea that anybody, an introvert or an extrovert, can navigate relationships and connections and mavens and connectors, and you can go to a conference like Scaling New Heights and you don't have to be a fly on the wall. The reason introverts don't engage is not because they're shy. It's because they're either already depleted from a day at the conference, and it extra depletes them. They don't have the energy restored up to go to the pool party or whatever. And the second reason they don't engage is introverts are better at observing human behavior and the passive engagement of that observation and reading people. They don't have to talk to think. They can just think, and thinking is quieter, right? So if you recognize those things about yourself, and maybe that's the eye opener, Lauren, I was after with this group, is a lot of people have brought those misconceptions into limiting factors on themselves that aren't even real. They say, I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to go to a conference like Scaling New Heights, or I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to go to that member social. And they haven't really broken down why they feel that way. And part of it is society's told them that parties aren't where they belong. That's not true. Our social gatherings aren't where they belong. That's not true. And it's not that you don't enjoy it. It just may be that you're really tired and it will deplete you further. So it could just be an exercise in will to say, now that I recognize it's depleting me, I'll just go put in the extra will. Like when you're running and that extra last mile you have to run, you just put in the extra will. Or it could be, hey, now I know the strategy. Let me, as much as I want the education, skip that last breakout hour, go get myself replenished with some alone time, and then go to the social gathering so I can be a more effective networker.
And like you, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. I want to also say what I see is that there's a spectrum from introvert to extrovert, and you might be somewhere. I found that I'm actually more in the middle, where I'm an ambivert. So I prefer isolation, but if I need to turn it on, I will be able to do that. However, introverts need to learn how to network in large gatherings differently than extroverts do, because
they have to put more energy on it.
Yeah,
it's a learned skill.
And this came true to me. I remember going to one very specific conference, and I walked into the showroom floor, and it was filled with people. It was so noisy. I literally turned around, walked right back out, sat down quietly in the lobby, and I had to figure out my strategy. And then once I kind of figured out how I could approach it, then I was able to go back in and navigate that room. So I think that one of the things, as far as someone who's new to networking and going to conferences, or more of an introvert, is that it does work. It can be very, very effective, but you approach it a little bit differently in a way that works for you than what you commonly think you ought to be doing. So it's not about collecting all the business cards. You
No,
know,
it's not. It is not. It's about being present. And part of being present is observing. So the extrovert actually has a handicap in this situation.
Mhm.
They're so busy talking, they're so busy telling the joke, being the life of the party, right? That they may not be as observant to the opportunities, the body language, what's going on around them, as the introvert is. So you may have some strengths, right, that you can bring to the equation. But the other thing I want to tell you, because, we're going into conference season and introverts, are in this audience. What I would say also, Lauren, what you're saying is great. If you get an instant sense of overwhelm, withdraw, recoup, get into the right frame of mind, go back in. That was great advice. The other advice I would give is choose wisely. So if you see something like, at Scaling New Heights a couple of years ago, we had this Gusto through this really big 80s themed party, and it was so much fun for people who like parties.
Right.
It was so much fun. But if you're an introvert, you might be thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to go, for 2.5 or 3 hours, and it would deplete me too much. So what you can do is still go buy all the 80s stuff on Amazon, make your appearance, tell yourself, just like I tell myself on the last mile of every 4-mile walk I've been doing every other day, this last mile, you won't enjoy, Joe, but keep the pace. Just go in and say, okay, this is me just doing my job, right? And then create both a methodology and a time frame. Say, I'm going in for 25, 30 minutes. My goals while I'm in here are to see at least these 10 people, if I can find them, and to take a certain amount of photographs, selfies, and group pictures, because you've got a personal brand to maintain, and maybe even a personal brand to counter that so-and-so is a wallflower. Or let's counter that. Let's get you out there on some Instagrams and some LinkedIns and some Twitters, because that's what that is. And let's start, creating this brand that, well, no, I'm actually a very personable person who loves people. I just happen to be an introvert. And then when you're done with your 20 to 30 minutes, go back to your room and replenish. Or go to dinner with a small group of people and replenish. Yeah, there you go.
And one of the things that I find is that I can study other different business models outside of the accounting profession, and sometimes they have things that are adaptable, but most people aren't looking at. So I want to kind of circle back to the word network for a minute, because when you and I were talking, the medical profession has a very different take on it, and they look at it from a more holistic approach about the customer. And I would love to hear your thoughts about how we might be able to take more of that medical approach with holistic networking or community building and really use that here in the accounting profession.
Well, that's insightful, because I think the medical profession is way ahead of us, and I think we have something to learn from them. So now we've introduced 3 different terms, right? There's network, social network, go shout out into the universe. Then there is network, a connection of relationships, right? So a community. And then there is this definition of network you just introduced, which is what the medical profession defines as a network. And this one's particularly intriguing to me, as the definition of accountancy is broadening, because now accountancy, I guess it always has, but increasingly accountancy doesn't mean just financial compilation. It means back office process outsourcing, controllership services like spend management and accounts receivable curation, bad debt expense mitigation, fraud mitigation, capital expenditure strategies. It means financial planning and analysis services, cash flow projections, financial analytics, dashboarding, CFO services representing clients to banks and investors, potential board members. There's such a broad definition of accountancy now, and I didn't even get into audit, tax, business valuation. I mean, just on and on, the more traditional mainline ones. But tax is emerging into tax analysis. So as accountancy now means something so much bigger well, here's the thing, Lauren. It's always meant something so much bigger. As we understand the broader definition of ourselves, as our market understands the broader definition of us, and we're turning a big corner on that. Some of that's out of necessity because we have to redefine our industry for this next generation and this next generation of technology. So as that's happening, it becomes more and more important for us to act like the medical profession. We don't have to necessarily get as specialized as they are. That can cut the wrong way. But let's just start with how specialized they are for a minute with one of my recent examples. I was in my 50s before finally my one wisdom tooth. I only had one wisdom tooth when I was born. My one wisdom tooth had to be pulled because it was just, I only had one and it was not a bad wisdom tooth. So finally my dentist said, Joe, you've reached the time now, later than most people, you got to get this thing out. So I said, all right, doc, pull it. He goes, oh, I don't do that. I'm going to send you to an oral surgeon. Now, a lot of dentists do pull wisdom teeth. I get it, but he doesn't do that. He sent me to an oral surgeon. And the lesson we can learn from this, maybe, be careful, take my caution about carrying it to too far of extremes. There are riches and niches, but there are leashes and niches, right? So you have to be careful you don't overlimit your approachable market, but just think for a minute, what happened to me as the patient in that moment? My respect for my dentist did not go down. My respect for my dentist went up because now I understand if you are doing dentistry work on me, you must be the best around. If that's all you do, if that's your focus, and if all of your professional development and career development and your skills, your 10,000 becomes 50,000, becomes 100,000 hours because he was nearing retirement, it's all just been on dentistry, how good of a dentist must you be, Dr. Freeman, right? I almost said Dr. Moeller as a joke, but no, Dr. Freeman. Then when I went to the oral surgeon, they only do oral surgical work. So how I felt so good sitting down there is this must be a really, really good wisdom tooth extractor. Now, but what they didn't refer to each other. They were networked together. It wasn't like he said, go find an oral surgeon. And by the way, I think this person's good. He said, I'm sending you to this person. And then when I got there, that person already, with my HIPAA release, had all of my dental work, all of my dental records, all my x-rays, all the information from Dr. Freeman's notes. All I had to do was say, I'm here, Dr. Freeman sent me, and they're like, absolutely, Mr. Woodard, and boom, I was in. Because they're not referring to each other. They're networked, right? And now we've turned it into an adjective. They're networked professionals. So how might then some of this, your audience here, use this? Well, if I'm really, really, really good at accounting services, and I mean even advanced accounting services, lease management, amortization, and fixed asset depreciation, and accrual basis entries, and even real-time accrual basis job costing for budgets that straddle month ends and year ends. And I mean, I'm just a master record keeper. And you have no interest whatsoever in getting into financial planning and analysis services. There's somebody else out there that only does financial planning and analysis services and doesn't want to do them. And that person is hungry for clean books, just as hungry as you are to help your clients use those books to some meaningful purpose. So don't create a referral relationship, create a network. And get your clients permission to cross-share their private information between you and this other professional. They have complete buy-in. They know they've triangulated it. You're not doing anything bad. They understand as well it's a network, and they understand that the two of you together create the total healthcare for them as a business. That's powerful.
And that goes back to the connector that you were talking about. regarding the tipping point with Malcolm Gladwell. So what I have found for myself is that being able to stay in my own lane is really beneficial to me. My clients appreciate it, but having a connection or that network of people that do things that I don't do that my clients need, and then being able to make that connection for them is actually a value add from my client's point of view.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that somebody's looking to steal my client if I introduce them. It's looking at they're serving my client in a different way than how I'm able to serve them.
Yeah, and if it is complementary and it has a little bit of overlap, then you're only networked with people at this level you trust to stay in their swim lane anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the last thing I wanted to just touch on is conferences. As you mentioned, conference season is coming up as tax season winds down, conference season winds up, and that even though I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, I have been able to connect and meet some people that have been long-lasting relationships. One of the things that I love is taking my virtual connections and actually meeting them in person. That's like a bonus to the relationship and expands how I know someone. So do you have maybe some guide or some way for people that are either new to this or they do see themselves more as an introvert on how to be able to go and just kind of like survive a conference?
Yeah. So I'm going to start so we can segue from what we've been talking about all this time. And that is with the relationship piece, but I'm going to frame it as the 4 3 things. I know that's a weird phrase, but the 4 3 things. So there are 4 areas of a conference where you want to walk away with 3 things each. All right. And just creating that simple outline and noting them down as you go will make all the difference in the world to your experience. So the first of the 4 things are 3 people I met at this conference knew that I want to build relationships with. You're going to meet 30. That's what makes it overwhelming. It's like trying to keep 30 balls juggling in the air. You'll drop all 30. But to juggle 3 balls in the air, I can't do it, Lauren, but a lot of people can. So, it makes it reasonable to go, okay, out of the 20 people I met, what's my exercise that I'm going to do here to hone it down to the 3 people I am going to intentionally go invest in a relationship with after this conference is over. And you have all these reasons why you're grading them, that way, not grading the people, but grading the value of the connection. All right. So then the second of the 4 3 things are the 3 key concepts that I learned in my education at the show. Because again, you're going to learn 100 things. 50 of them are going to be really, really insightful or new. So what are the 3 key things I learned that if I will deploy them in my business will make a very big difference in my business over the next 12 months? So we have 3 people, 3 things. The next one is 3 technologies. At Scaling New Heights, there are 150 exhibitors. But what you're going to need to do if you're going to go to our conference in June is find the 3 that you want to investigate farther, that you want to fully vet for your practice, that you want to strongly consider folding into your technology stack. It's not necessarily that you're making the decision at the conference, these are the 3 I'm going to deploy. You don't know that yet. These are the 3 I'm going to lean into, focus on, and investigate more thoroughly when I leave the conference. Now, obviously, this is not arbitrary. Can I have 5? Somebody might say, Joe, well, you can have whatever you want to. It's a free world. I'm packaging it into the 4 3 things. And then the last of the 3 things, the 4th 3 things are the big ideas, the inspirational moments, the eurekas that I picked up that if I will deploy them in my life, now my business now, that's learning. In my life, it will change who I am as a person. It will change who I am in relationship to others, make me a better husband, make me a better father, make me a better son, okay? Make me a better brother, a better friend. Or it might change my entire point of view about the way I see the world. Now, you might go, Joe, that's a pretty tall mandate for any conference to produce that in me. But if you think about the conference experiences you've had, Lauren, that I've had, my big life-changing moments often come from so-and-so speaking at a conference, right? Because they were brought there because they were incredibly inspirational. I mean, for crying out loud, Oprah Winfrey was at QuickBooks Connect in the first year. I mean, so inspiration is powerful. I'm sorry, I think the second year. But anyway, yes, the point is made.
Okay. And just to sum it up, some things you want to do, and this way you're intentional and you maybe have some strategy now, is that you want to really find 3 people that you want to continue to follow up with and maintain a connection. I'm going to say, as far as follow up right there and then, maybe get something on the calendar for that follow-up instead of reaching out afterwards once they may have forgotten about you. The other thing is looking for those 3 things that you can take away and you learned. So it deepens your knowledge and your expertise in some way. Tech stack. So tech stack is ever evolving and there's so much out there. So really find what might be a best fit for moving your firm forward in an intentional way instead of a haphazard way where you're trying to solve a crisis. So give some forethought to things. And then the last one is, how can you find some things where you might actually just be a better person? Or or improve a relationship in some way. So I love the 3 things. It is something that anybody can wrap their mind around. And it gives you some purpose then for walking into a room or for going to that cocktail event afterwards and being able to really fully participate in the conference.
Can I just say one more thing on this?
Yeah, please.
To encourage your audience, and it doesn't have to be my conference. I'm not running a commercial in this statement. There are lots of them out there. But there are about 25,000 people in the standalone CAS practice industry, the non-CPA industry, that have actual businesses, whether you're sole practitioner or not. It's not a side hobby, it's not a side job. It's a real business model. There are about 25,000-ish out there. It's a hard number to come up with. And at any given conference that caters to those folks, XeroCon, QuickBooks Connect, Scaling New Heights, every one of those conferences has less than 2,500 attendees and less than around 1,500 non-CPAs. So if you're listening in here and you're a standalone CAS practice, or otherwise known as a professional bookkeeper without CPA behind your name, which, by the way, I'm not a CPA either, you less than 10% of your peers attend a conference in a year, any given year. So, and if you're a CPA, the numbers are even more staggering, because if you count professional and private CPAs, the numbers in the hundreds of thousands. And yet, best that we all show hosts can discern, with loose overlap studies, it's somewhere around 15,000, maybe 20,000 at most. So less than 10% of CPAs go to shows as well. And so the question I would ask you for your audience is, or ask of your audience is, if you walked away from any conference you go to, whatever one it is, with those 12 things, is that not worth the plane flight? It absolutely is. But the reason we don't go to conferences is because we think we're not going to get something tangible, something deployable, something that will create new wealth for me in the weeks and months that follow, that's going to be worth the price I pay. And the reason we think that is because we don't have a plan. If we use this plan, the value goes up.
I fully agree. The other thing is that every conference has its own personality as far as how they approach things, and they all attract a little bit of a different type of people to it. And it might be putting out there in your social network, which is the best for this particular thing, if there's something specific you want to take out of it. And that's a great way to start also. Joe, this has always been, well, every time we talk, it's an engaging conversation. I'm always learning from you. Some of the things that we talked about is how to transcend beyond that traditional networking approach, looking at how to maximize professional communities, even if you're a network, an introvert or a newbie to this, and looking at holistic networking as a way to elevate your firm. So if somebody wanted to find out more about you, Joe, or Woodard Events, what's the best way for them to be able to do that?
Well, I've kind of made it easy. I've actually created a registered trademark out of my last name. I did it. Disney did it. I'm nowhere near Disney, but at least we both did it. So it's just woodard.com, WOODARD.com. And just the big caution I would have is if you type in woodward.com, I have no idea where that goes. I've never tried. So make sure it's one W. It's WOODARD.com, and that'll get you to everything that we do.
Perfect. Joe, thank you so much. I am looking forward to connecting with you at Scaling New Heights in June. And anybody that is going to be joining us there, please reach out to me, say hello. I would love to be able to give you a real hug instead of a virtual hug. Anyway, thank you so much. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solutions, showing accounting professionals how to double their income working half the time.